Hydropolitic. I'm Scott Stearns.
My name's Paul Sickle. Welcome aboard.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
How are things?
Well, they're warm.
Yeah, it is. It is 90. It was something like 95 degrees when I was driving home today.
Yeah, I think the official high cleared either 93 or 94.
Yeah.
So we're in Milwaukee, an undisclosed location.
Yes.
Somewhere on the south side of Milwaukee. We were once in Middleton, but that was a while ago. Anyway, it's and in Milwaukee, as most of you know, you don't always get a real summer. Sometimes you get a pretend summer. This is not a pretend summer. It is June 11th, and we've already had 2, 3, 4 90-degree days.
Yeah, it's full swing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not officially summer, but obviously we're days away.
And so. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look like we're going to have a real break in the heat.
No.
Consistently. I think tomorrow there's some speculation that near the lake the high will only be in the upper 70s, but inland it will be well into the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
It's a real warming pattern. Inland, by the lake, sometimes there might be apparently they're thinking a lake breeze will actually impact the official temperature.
If it blows in from the east.
Right.
So that's your weather report.
The lake, which is 55 degrees right now.
Yes.
Blowing in.
Yeah.
But, the thing with Milwaukee summer, unfortunately, it often includes, which it appears to be doing this year, an increase in violence in the city.
This is a recurring theme.
Yeah. Yeah. And frankly, violence, unfortunately, in Milwaukee is nothing new.
No.
Milwaukee usually is among... At best, it's in the middle of large cities for not gang violence, just violence in general.
Yes.
Gun violence, though, is mostly what it is. And in recent years, as crime has dropped in a lot of larger cities, Milwaukee's become one of the leaders, if you want to call it that. It's one of the worst
capita,
cities.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not where we want to be as a people.
I mean, they say in Cleveland, at least we're not Detroit, but Detroit might be making a comeback though. So
well, yeah, I mean, Detroit,
we might fall behind them eventually too.
The population of Detroit is significantly higher than it is here. I mean, the metro area, obviously, the city's been losing population, but
right.
So yeah, we had
we had a rough weekend.
We did. We had a rough weekend. We had some violence on the lakefront.
Yeah, including a police officer.
Police involved shooting a member of the sheriff's department, deputy.
Right, a sheriff. So one of Clark's staff.
Yes,
which I actually didn't put in my notes.
Yeah,
as one of the things we needed to touch on was that he's a Clark deputy.
We'll ease into that, but it's. We don't know all the details. There's the procedure for those of you out of state. The procedure in Wisconsin is that when you have a police involved shooting, it is that department is not allowed to basically self audit. Right. So because it's the Milwaukee Sheriff's Department that's involved in this particular shooting, neighboring Waukesha County,
an outside agency, and unfortunately too, because it's in the city of Milwaukee. You could have said, well, it was a sheriff guy who shot the person, so therefore you could have the city of Milwaukee Police Department do it, another outside agency. So
but that may be a little too close to home.
Yeah, so
for most folks.
Although, frankly, Waukesha County is probably a little too close to home. But I do think that this does ensure a little bit more integrity in the process, and this is probably one of the one or two laws Walker's signed that I actually agree with. Yeah. I do think a Democrat would have done the same thing.
Well, I think it's common sense, but I guess
Walker though did sign this law, so I'll give the man a little credit.
So the particular details of this case, because we should provide some context for those that from outside the area that haven't seen the headlines. In the summertime, the lakefront is kind of the place to be, as it is in any community that has a waterfront. That there's a lot of people that come down and they hang out. And they
right, and it's very much the place to be if you're poorer. Mm-hmm. And the better part of the lakefront's in the north side of the city, and the African American community of Milwaukee mostly lives north in the northern half of the city.
Yeah.
So it's the most accessible area, excuse me,
Yeah.
for black people in Milwaukee who don't have a lot of income.
Right. I'm just looking for some easy recreation.
I mean, there's many people of all different ethnicities that have the money to go to Wisconsin Dells or Door County or where, what have you. So give us a description.
Well, from what I understand, and from what I've seen in terms of video, what I've read, you had a sheriff's deputy pursuing a particular vehicle. They were headed southbound, I believe.
I think it wound up being northbound.
So they ended up because they were trying to evade the deputy. They crossed over into the oncoming traffic.
They were trying to evade the following, the SUV, the car.
Right. And so what happened then, as they were going against traffic,
a deputy on foot.
Yeah,
right.
A deputy on foot on Lincoln Memorial Drive fired shots into the vehicle,
about 8 or 9 rounds,
and shot the driver, and the car then crashed into another vehicle, and at that point there were arrests made of the other passengers, and then there were two of them. Was it 2 passengers total in the vehicle?
There were 2 passengers, a female and a male.
Yeah, and they were both taken to Freighter Hospital.
The male, I believe, was unharmed in the back.
Okay.
The driver is unfortunately on life support. It's an open question as to whether or not he'll survive.
Yeah, it's a grave condition, is what I heard tonight.
Yeah, and that's really and I don't even really want to get into too many arguments over this. I will say this. I don't think reckless driving or even evasion of the police deserves a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And yet I also understand that a car driving toward an officer who's on foot is clearly a grave threat.
Right, an officer much less oncoming traffic.
Right, and this is what happened.
Yeah.
An officer on foot,
right,
a deputy, as they say with the sheriffs, on foot, fired into the vehicle. And
yeah, I mean, it's a split-second decision, obviously, that the deputy made. And, I mean, the first thing I thought about when I heard about this is, wait, what? He fired shots into the vehicle, and I mean, just given you have to picture the number of cars that were on the road, plus the number of pedestrians that are in the area.
Every Sunday night on a nice night.
I mean, you're talking thousands of people.
And as long as I've lived in Milwaukee, it's thousands of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. And
it's like a festival atmosphere especially Sundays.
Yeah, and this wasn't like at 2 a.m. This was like
7:40 p.m.
7:40 p.m. So like just after the dinner hour, people, the sun is still out. It's summertime. And so there were a lot of people in the area.
The reason I bring up race is that this is one of the best places for recreation. Mm-hmm. If you're poor and you live in the city of Milwaukee, especially if you're black and poor and you live in the city of Milwaukee, because you congregate with other people from throughout the community, perhaps people who you don't see every day. Yeah.
Well, and another detail that we should throw out there too is in Wisconsin, the waterfront access is supposed to be in the public domain. So if you picture the Lake Michigan north of downtown Milwaukee, it's all public county parks. It's all publicly owned essentially. So that allows people to kind of come in from all over the area, without having to pay additional fees or whatever. You just come out.
There's a few places where you have to pay a meter to park.
Exactly. Or you take the bus or whatever.
And it's beautiful. And it's a real asset. It's a great thing for so many people to have this access. And
absolutely.
Of course, when you have thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of people in a small square mile area, you may have somebody who doesn't always have the best of motives or might just be trying to prove themselves, might not be the best actor at that time.
Sure.
And nonetheless, I don't think that being a hot dog, so to speak, deserves a death sentence.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously the driver.
There's other considerations as well.
The driver supposedly, and again, this is under investigation, but the speculation is that he he was aiming for the deputy, or if he wasn't aiming for the deputy, he was at least headed towards oncoming traffic. I mean, that whatever, right. There's my thing, not knowing again all the outcome of the investigation, is how, given the number of people that were in the area, how does this deputy fire shots into the vehicle?
Unfortunately, we're seeing it right now on TV being rebroadcast, and it's really chilling to watch too with the sound when you can hear the shots.
It blows my mind. Just
you can hear 8 or 9 shots.
I think he's very lucky that he didn't hit an innocent victim, because just given the proximity of other vehicles,
somebody who had nothing to do with the chase.
I mean, what if he would have ducked or got out of the way, and it would have gone, a bullet could have gone through the vehicle, hit a kid in a neighboring car or something? I mean,
or the person even that's taking the pictures here.
Correct.
I mean,
it could have ended much differently. Now, obviously, as we move forward and the investigation happens, the deputy will obviously be on desk duty for a while, or worst case, have a suspension while the investigation continues. But
so I think just from what I can tell, that this just from looking at the video, it's not likely that the deputy will be found criminally liable.
No, I don't think so either.
On the other hand, there's a pretty good chance that the deputy could face some sort of disciplinary action for not acting in 100% best judgment or not following training. However, this is where it gets very political. His boss is Sheriff David Clark.
This is true, and we've talked about him on more than one occasion, and about his lack of judgment. Mm-hmm. And so supposedly he was headed off to D.C., but that appears to be not happening. And we haven't heard any other announcements recently about his supposed position that was offered at Homeland Security. So that must be on hold, I guess, for right now. So we just have to assume that he's going to be the sheriff for the foreseeable future.
But it makes me think that Clark probably encourages this kind of. Well, more like fire into it, because the strongest criticism that I know of, that I can see that's very obvious, is that you shouldn't be firing into a heavily densely populated area. Right. By densely populated, I mean beach area with basically a traffic jam by rule. Yeah. Like every Sunday there's a traffic jam down there. Right. With hundreds of people, I mean,
I'm just picturing if being down there, if I was there, with my family or something like that, just unfortunately happened to be walking up, Lake Memorial Drive, steps from where this occurred.
And this is
I mean, and also, what's to say that the guy, apparently he was found with there was a loaded vehicle, a loaded firearm, loaded handgun in the car that they found, which isn't going to help this guy's case, obviously, when it comes to review. But what's to say that couldn't have been used and it couldn't have been a shootout?
Sure. And
it's all speculation, and it ended how it happened. But the other thing for me is, if your goal, and I don't know all the procedures. I mean, maybe some of the stuff will come out in the investigation. But if your goal is to disable the vehicle, right? Because it's an imminent danger that they will hit oncoming traffic or a pedestrian. Why wouldn't you aim for the tires or do something to actually disable the vehicle?
Something a lot of people.
Why would you take out the driver? Because then the vehicle is driverless and it could do any number of things. So I don't. These are just questions from somebody who doesn't is not in the law enforcement circle.
So we got about 10 minutes left. We got 5 more topics, unfortunately. I mean, I'm so sorry. I mean, I feel bad even laughing here. We probably should give a whole podcast.
No, I think. I think it's worth going into. I mean, I think this is an important subject, and we're using.
And it's right here. It's right now, and it's a reflection of the broader politics of America.
It's a local example of something tragic that occurred in Milwaukee, but it's not something that is unique to us. It's the kind of stuff that happens all over this country.
So let's give a glance over the healthcare debate.
Yeah, so I think we would definitely want to cover the healthcare topic, because there's shit bubbling in the Senate right now. So
I think it's bubbling would be very understatement.
It's a nice long simmer that's going on with this legislation.
Okay, I think the pot's create a fire alarm. But
I'm saying what my analogy is such that it's
Go ahead.
It's simmering because nobody really knows that it's like the substance of what's occurring, but there's action happening.
This guy knows the Senate.
Because they're not releasing legislation. So as we talked about previously, and as our listeners are probably well aware, the House passed the bill a few weeks back, and now it's in the Senate's hands. And because of the rules of reconciliation, they have to get a CBO score before they can even vote on the thing. So the plan is, all indications are they're going to privately send it to the Congressional Budget Office for scoring before actually releasing it. Given what the last House version took, I think it was about 2 weeks for them to score it. So there'll probably something similar for the Senate version,
right.
And then it comes out, over the next couple of weeks, and then McConnell's goal, the Majority Leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, his goal is to get the thing passed before the July 4th recess.
Yeah.
So. Which basically means, and their plan has been all along apparently, to completely subvert the committee process and bring it directly to the floor.
Right, they were going to do that back in January.
Right. And I mean, and how much did Republicans bitch and moan about supposedly the Affordable Care Act getting rammed through without any substantive debates or any of that? I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, what we heard about.
So, right, and I've heard the speculation that the Senate will do about 80% of what the House did in terms of bad things. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's only 80% that's bad. So that means 80% of 23 million people means what? 18 or 19 million people lose their health care?
Sure, that's okay.
I mean, Scott Walker had a hell of a sleight of hand the other day when he said if nothing's done, 28 million people will be without health care by 2026. That is true, but if they do this, another 23 million will be without, or 18 million if it's 80%.
Right.
And so it'll be like 50 million people without. I mean, it's just what a clever sleight of hand on the part of Walker's tweet. But
well, and that's so all the results, at least according to the CBO, all the results have been bad. The scoring has been terrible for this legislation. It just looks awful.
Right.
And so
there will be 28 million without health care in 2026. That's a baseline, unless something progressive is done, which
could happen
clearly,
if there's a backlash or something. But
not under Trump.
You can't. Right. I mean, you can't take any of this for granted. We're living in the era that we are.
Right. So the fact of the matter is, you have to take that as a baseline. And then an extra 23 million, that's 51 million that will be uninsured by 2026.
So I mean, so procedurally, I mean, they really are just trying to get this thing done with very little debate, no input, no amendments, all that stuff, all the things that could potentially make any legislation better if it's properly reviewed and vetted, and representatives are allowed to have input. So to provide some context, when you compare it to the Affordable Care Act, in 2009, over the summer, June, July, Democrats obviously were in control at that point. The Senate Health Committee spent 60 hours over 13 days marking up the bill. And then in September and October, the Finance Committee worked on the legislation, which was really the version that came out because, remember, it didn't have the public option.
Right.
Max Baucus was the chair of the committee at the time out of Montana. And that was the longest markup in 2 decades because they worked on it for 8 days. They considered more than 130 amendments. They had 79 roll call votes, and then they voted it out.
Within the committee.
Yeah, within the committee.
Right.
And I mean, they're not going to do anything in committee for this thing. They want to completely subvert that process to take away the say of other senators that have some expertise on the topic.
So much for transparency.
Exactly.
No, so a week ago you said that they were going to do a show us the corpse kind of strategy.
Well, I mean, that could still happen. So,
which is, again...
So the show the corpse strategy is basically you get it out there, they vote it down, maybe it fails, 49 to 51 or something like that, whatever, and then they move on into tax reform or infrastructure, what have you. But
or they move on and then try to pass it again?
We just don't know because we don't know what this legislation looks like.
I mean, jam it through.
Exactly. I mean, so again,
I think that it's a fair bet they're going to jam it through. Because why would you put it to a vote if you didn't think it was?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because at some point you have to move on, even if you don't have the cards, because you have to point to a result,
right?
So that you have an excuse to move on to the next thing.
But we think that Portman has moved to being in favor, right?
Well, we don't know because we don't know what the thing's going to look like.
It's
all kinds of speculation.
But my understanding is the only two outstanding Republican votes are Collins and Murkowski in the northeast and northwestern corners of the country, Maine and Alaska.
Rand Paul. I mean, Rand Paul may not want to vote for anything.
Yeah, so that's maybe where I was hearing that the Rand Pauls will vote no.
Yeah.
And
he may end up being like the main opposition to Trump. He may want to primary him in a few years, more so than a guy like Cruz.
So Rand Paul votes no.
Yeah,
and then Collins and Murkowski vote no.
Then that's it.
It's done. Then they're at 49.
Yeah.
Pence can't break.
If one of those breaks, then it's 50-50. Pence breaks the tie. Assuming all the Democrats hold, which there's every indication that there are no Democrats. Even old Joe Manchin's not going to vote for the thing,
right? Because of what it's going to do
all the Medicaid recipients,
right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I talked about the committee votes, and I mean, the full Senate itself back in 2009, they debated the bill for 25 days. It passed on Christmas Eve, 2009. I mean, by no indication did they ram this bill through. And any Republican that is going to go in front of a mic over the coming days and weeks and is going to say, "Well, we're trying to remedy this tragedy that is Obamacare that Democrats rammed through without any Republican input at all." That's bullshit. That's utter bullshit. Right. And they should be called on that.
Yeah, they should be. Absolutely. And we're doing it. You heard it here first.
Right, exactly.
So on that end, I mean, along those lines, we had Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, soon to be President of the United States, probably.
We'll see.
We had him here in Milwaukee, visiting with Scott Walker and several high-profile healthcare executives, trying to push the repeal. Do you think that moved the dial at all?
I think it's just cheerleading at this point.
Do you think maybe it's to give Johnson a little help? Ron Johnson, who's talked like he's hesitant here and there. He wants to be bipartisan.
I don't think Johnson's ever seriously been in opposition to whatever's going to come out of the thing. He was just reelected. He's got 6 years of insulation. He's a yes vote.
He's made a bunch of statements to say that he thinks that the Democrats need to be part of it. That he said that most recently he said when they did finally, a bunch of pro-healthcare people finally got to meet with them at an event that was supposed to be just Tea Party partiers, but Citizen Action Wisconsin and several other groups, some of these indivisible groups, just got together and staged a protest outside, stayed incredibly alert, and found out when the public access to the meeting came available, how to get tickets to it, and wound up getting a strong majority of the people who actually attended. The Tea Party people, unfortunately for Johnson, did not show up. There were maybe 10 or 20.
Are you saying there's an enthusiasm gap?
And there were 40 or 50 people that were, granted, there was enthusiasm, maybe a strategy gap. But there was, which is fortunate because we had a strategy gap the other way last year.
Well, that's obviously.
Not sure, enthusiasm probably too. But anyway, we had 40 or 50 people to 10 or 20 that were really worried about this health care bill, and they peppered Johnson with questions. He said, "Look, I'm trying to slow it down," was one of the things he said. The other thing he said was that he would meet with healthcare workers, including low-wage frontline healthcare workers,
right?
Because he was saying, "Well, I've met with insurance people," and the question came up, "Well, have you met with any workers in healthcare?
People on the front lines that are actually going to be impacted by this thing?"
Right. As of today, there's no scheduled meeting with the healthcare workers.
So it looks like lip service.
Yeah. So do you think Pence was here?
Shut up, though.
Do you think Pence was here to kind of give him a little more courage to be an
Well,
asshole,
I think it's just kind of a full court press right now with Trump and Pence in general. I mean, they're going to Iowa and they're going elsewhere to kind of shore up those areas of the country that historically have gone Democratic, that swung his way.
And maybe it's to help Walker. Although, on the other hand, if this goes through and it really looks like a disaster, how good is it for Walker's politics that he's attached?
Well, I don't think Trump gives a shit about Walker. I think.
Why does Walker agree then to go?
Well, because
this brings us into our next few topics.
He's attaching himself to Trump because Trump ended up being more popular.
I just found an exit strategy from this podcast.
Oh, yeah?
Now it's on to the Walker thing.
Okay.
So tomorrow, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is visiting Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
He's going to Waukesha County Technical College to promote, some sort of job innovations thing.
Right.
That
some photo,
apparently,
some photo op, like wearing a hard hat or something.
I mean, not that jobs growth or technical college is a bad thing. It's a very good thing.
No,
I just don't know what the hell Trump's done for any of it. Or Walker.
No, nothing.
What's Walker done for the Wisconsin Technical College system lately? And so, but he's going to bolster Walker.
Yeah.
So first the photo ops, and then a high roller fundraiser. The thing is, Walker can say all he wants that the job growth has been okay. It just hasn't been that great, though, frankly. And not only that, but with
startups.
Right, Wisconsin's a low wage state.
Yeah.
And that's not been our history.
No. And is it a coincidence that the Act 10 bill went through? Which
screw the teachers,
yep,
and then take
labor
away
unions, and like all of a sudden, lo and behold, wages are lower than the rest.
I mean, when do we finally get the message out that Walker is a low wage governor? It's low wage Walker.
Low wage Walker.
I think tomorrow. I hope that message starts. That's my best hope. Is that
Well, it's got to start somewhere.
Let's point out, fortunately, there will be protesters.
Yeah.
I'll be one of them. Outside the Hyatt, starting about 4 tomorrow.
All right.
Which will be after you've heard this.
You're not going to CTC?
Or before you've heard this. No.
Yeah.
But I think we really have to get that out there. This is a low-wage governor, low-wage Walker.
Yeah. Well, we need candidates at some point. I mean, there's obviously a lot of speculation about who's going to run, who's not going to run. But at some point, people have to start announcing.
Well, I think
we've got a little time. Obviously, we're a year and a half out.
The ones that are pretty obvious are Dana Wachs from Eau Claire, Kathleen Reinhardt, apparently.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Also, I think Malin Mitchell's running.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think that.
What about Paul Sogg, then old Mayor of Madison?
Yeah, right. Now there we go. I think within that ensures a Walker third term.
It may.
He gets the nomination. Mike McCabe from the Democracy Campaign, which unfortunately I don't think he would do much better. Topics to cover next week. What would you suggest?
Well, I think maybe we'll know more about where this healthcare thing's going. It's like I said, it's kind of it's like the chud coming out of the sewer at this point. You know, we're just kind of waiting for the moment where it's going to rear its ugly head and just kill us all. So
right, we'll know more about the governor's race as well. So
hopefully
a little bit about who's running or whatever it may be. We'll find out if Walker actually raises $10 million.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to raise it in one sitting, but he might raise $1 million.
He might.
So with that,
yes. So thank you, listeners, and follow us on Facebook at Badger Politic, and then on Twitter at Badger_Politic, and BadgerPolitic.com for the podcast, and forward.